Did you get the toothpaste?
Yes, I forgot to tell you
Oh,
yesterday.
it's okay. I saw the picture of it and I wanted to, because it was sort of tucked.
Yeah, yeah. I took it in and then
Good, good.
yeah, so it's all, I was like, oh, I don't have to buy toothpaste for 6 months.
They're recording this now, Lucy.
Oh, well, I'll be
We'll
quiet.
wait until later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Morning,
All right.
Brian.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself now.
I'll mute my microphone too. Okay. Good morning.
Everybody. Hey, hi, hi, hi. How are you?
Good,
Hey,
good.
Brian. Brian and the twins. It's like a 80s sitcom. It's
Brian.
Brian and the twins. Okay. I do need one moment just to pull up my notes. Running a little bit behind today. So I think I'm going to be like in time and then just not.
Like King George.
George? Oh, from
The King's speech. And he tells
oh,
him, well, you had a little stammer on that one word. And he said, well,
yes.
I had to have it, otherwise I wouldn't know it was me.
Very good. Very good. All right, let me see. So just while I'm getting my act together here, um, let's see. Okay, so just want to remind those of you who are soak people, we're going to have soak at 12:30 today. So that's an hour after this session ends. Also, it would be a great idea to sign up for the retreat that's happening next weekend. You haven't done that already. Um, for those of you who have not received the newsletter, uh, you can find all that information on our website. So you can register there and find out about what uh, what that retreat is all about. It's going to be awesome. Going to heavily, heavily focus on practicing and meditation. Hey, Eileen. Uh, but be aware that, there's all kinds of different meditation, and we'll do walking meditation, and there will be breaks and things like that. So don't panic if it seems like maybe a lot. It is a lot, but it's not impossible. And there will be movement and, like I said, sort of other types of meditation and so forth. Then we're also starting 2 new classes in March. I don't know I have the dates for that just yet. I'm still working on it, but pardon me. One class will be Awakening Wisdom, which we will be studying the text of the same name by one of our main teachers, Tuku Pema Rinpoche. And then, where is this? And then we'll be starting the 3-year program called Buddhism from the Ground Up. Also, we'll be starting that in March. I might put that off until April, but I have to see what the schedule is first. But that hold on, it's gonna be talking and trying to work at the same time. So that's a 3-year program. The first year is studying a traditional text called Words of My Perfect Teacher. The second year is doing a particular practice given to us by one of our other main teachers, Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche. And the third year is doing the Nundro, or the preliminary practices. So this is a very long-term course. if you don't feel ready to, commit to 3+ years, that's totally fine. You can just do the first year, see what you think. Anybody can study that text, but from the second and third year, you have to have done the first year in order to do the second and third years. So keep that in mind. So all that information will be in the newsletter and on the website. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, it would be great to do that as soon as possible. All the links for everything are in the description below if you're on YouTube. It looks like I cannot find my notes, so it's okay. I know this subject inside and out. Doesn't really matter. Today, we've been talking about the 4 mind changes, or the 4 thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma. And today we'll be talking about the suffering of samsara, or the suffering of cyclic existence, which is the 4th of those 4 thoughts. Boy, do I wish I'd done this earlier. Okay. Give it 1 more minute. And then yep. Oh, I can't keep 2 thoughts in my head at the same time. Doo-doo-doo. Also, we have set up the dates. We have these Zoom group practice situation. All right, I can't find them. So dates have been established at this point. So you can also find that on our website. Under the practice tab, you'll find a sub-tab called group practice on Zoom. That is all the information that you need. So that is an opportunity for people to practice together, do their own practice together. There's no instructions, but people do find it helpful to practice with others. So it can make it easier for us to, just do our practice, whatever that may be. It doesn't matter the practice. If you're doing mindfulness, a breathing practice, or walking meditation, or some kind of accumulation, or your preliminary practices, it really doesn't matter. You do whatever practice you like, and just having other people there can help us to do our practice. I don't know. It's really great to practice with others. So have a look at that and read the instructions carefully. One of the main aspects is for the class days, which are Monday evening, Tuesday evening, and Thursday evening. Once we start those other 2 classes, the 3-year program will be on Thursdays, and then the Awakening Wisdom class, will be on Tuesdays. So for those, that will be from 6:30 to 8. We do ask that you come on time for those if you're going to do group practice at that time, just so it doesn't disrupt the class. But for all the other times listed, you can come late, you can come in the middle, you can, however much time you have to practice, you don't have to be there for the whole time. Some of the blocks are like 4 hours based on what people's response is. Like if somebody said like they want 7 to 9, and someone else said they want like 9 to 11, I just made 7 to 11. This, but you don't have to stay that whole time. And for the class, when we have class and a Zoom practice session on the same night, you need to come on time, like I said, to not disturb class. because I put people in different Zoom rooms. But for that, you can leave when you want. So like, let's say you only want to do half an hour practice, just come at 6:30. We do the, bodhicitta motivation together. And then I put people in rooms. And then if you want to leave at 7, you can leave at 7. There's no issue. So I hope that's clear. If you have any questions, let me know. Like I said, I tried to make it very clear on the website. Yes, Christine. Tess.
Oh, I forgot to change my name.
Yeah.
You mentioned that if you come in to a Zoom and then
Mhm.
leave before the end, not to do something, not to leave it open, just to leave.
Well, no.
I was a little,
That's a
I
really good
wasn't quite
point.
clear about that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I forgot about that. No, what I asked was like, if you open the session, because anybody who clicks on the link can open the session. I don't have to open it. Okay. I just asked for the time that you're there, even if you're the only one there,
Mhm.
keep it open, because maybe you
That
show up
means to keep, what does that mean to keep it open? How
it
do
means
you
like
leave?
what I'm thinking is like, let's say that you start a session at 6 in the morning and
Mm.
you're the only one there. Maybe and let's say you're going to be there from 6 to 8, let's say. Okay. And uh I don't want you to just go off of Zoom because nobody else is there at 6:30 or 6:15, because maybe somebody's going to come in at 7.
Oh, I see. So do whatever you're going to do, bodhicitta, and then dedicate to merit, but just on your own. But then just as you leave, stay there, but then leave, and that's not a problem. That's what I was confused.
Right. Like if you're there, I have to put this in the instructions because
Yeah.
it's a really important point. So if you are there,
Hmm.
let's say that let's say, let's just make it easy and say you intend to be there from 7 to 8.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if you're alone, you want to stay on Zoom in case somebody comes at
Oh,
7:30.
yeah. Okay, now I get it. Just
Yeah.
so because
But
somebody could come in at 7:20.
correct.
Mhm.
But if let's say, you at so you determine you're going to sit from 7 to 8 and nobody comes, no, still you're the only one there at 8 o'clock, you
Mhm.
can just turn Zoom off.
But I would just leave, not, I would just leave that meeting. At the end, like if I'm
I
doing,
know, I'm thinking, but
because somebody else could then open their own Zoom.
yeah, but the problem there is if you don't close the meeting, not just leave, if you don't close the meeting.
How do you close the meeting? When I leave, that closes it. I mean, I have to use Zoom for my other stuff, so I have to close it. I mean, I can't just leave it open because I use Zoom for my work.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like to close out the Zoom completely rather than just leave individually. So I don't know. I'm going to have to look into this because I didn't consider this.
Mhm.
Um,
I would
because
just leave, and that would mean that if somebody else could come in, but I can still use
no, but
my own Zoom.
no, I don't think that you should just leave unless leaving closes it out completely. Because if you don't close it out completely,
My
I'm
Zoom, my Zoom and your Zoom, I think, are separate. I don't think that I need to close it. I wouldn't even know how to close it out completely. I leave, and that's it. You just leave, and that.
right. But my thing is, if you open it, what we have to, let's talk about this later. I've done it
Okay,
because we're taking time. But
I
thank you
didn't
for
mean
bringing that
to.
up.
Yeah.
That's a very, very
Uh,
good point. I just am concerned that if somebody else tries to get on,
after
like
I've
they
left.
might, let me finish. If somebody tries to get on,
Mm.
then they might get a message that there's a different meeting already in progress if you don't close out the whole thing. That's my concern, but it might not work that way. I
Mhm.
don't know what happened. So we have to maybe later when we have time, we can kind of experiment with that and see what
Okay.
happens. Because from my point of view, it's like I'm always the host. So it's a different situation than something else. And maybe if you sign on, you might be the host, That's where the issue comes in. So I'm not sure if it works like that. So let's look into that later. Okay. Thanks so much, Tess. That's a really good point. All right. So let's get started. So we want to just begin by settling in, getting mind and body together. And sound us and get up shidis and pamakara jabani shuna susan up to the I mean, she can't keep her trying to soon get you know when they're such a kind of such a silly animation. Again, you get something like a certain polite, since you know, it's an issue to talk to people, can you just talk to people? I'm going to start with our bodhicitta motivation, considering the suffering of others, which we are going to be discussing this morning in particular, and generating compassion for them. And out of that compassion, generating a strong wish to attain enlightenment for their benefit. So today's the fourth in a series of 4 talks on the 4 mind changes. So the 4 thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma is the way that is typically mentioned or talked about. So the there we go. Okay. We have the 4 mind changes are meant to turn our mind towards the Dharma, like meaning make us want to practice, make us want to actually follow this path, you know, do what's necessary to follow this path. And this can be, you know, quite challenging. So I find it, as I've said in the past, very encouraging that, you know, the Buddhist masters since the beginning have recognized that it can be challenging to practice. And the reason I find that encouraging is because sometimes we can really feel like the odd man out, you know, like, oh, I'm sure it's easy for everybody else, and I'm just the one who doesn't get it or can't do it right or whatever, you know. And this is saying, no, you know, this is something that's really common that a lot of people struggle with. So we don't need to feel, you know, particularly bad about anything. It's just this is how people are. Okay, so those are just as a quick review. The 4 mind changes are precious human life. So briefly, that is a life that has all the conditions necessary for us to be interested in the Dharma and to practice. The second one is impermanence and death. So that's with an understanding that, you know, we could die at any moment, everything is impermanent, and we could lose this precious human life. So we should practice. So it's like we have a precious human life, which is very difficult to get. So we should practice. That life is impermanent, and we never know when we're going to die. As the Tibetans say, death is certain, but the time of death is uncertain. So we should practice. Then last week we discussed karma, or the law of cause and effect, which is quite serious. And, you know, we don't know what we've done in the past. We don't know what awaits us in the future. Therefore, we should practice. Okay. And the fourth one is the suffering of samsara. So when we regard the suffering of samsara, and it's sort of this twofold result of contemplating that, one is compassion for others and their suffering, and this you know, like we just said with the bodhicitta motivation, this strong sense of like, I need to do something. I want to all these beings to be free of suffering. And then for also oneself, like, I want to get out of this mess. You know, when we contemplate the suffering of samsara or cyclic existence, you know, it should inspire some feeling of renunciation, revulsion for cyclic existence, and a desire to be free of it. Okay, so that's the fourth of these four mind changes. So as I said, I don't have my notes, but that's okay. we'll discuss it. So the let's begin by discussing what is cyclic existence. Okay. Our teachers are trying to, use English words or French words or non, Tibetan or Sanskrit so that our understanding is a bit more clear, I think. So Tu Rinpoche prefers us to say cyclic existence over samsara. Samsara is a Sanskrit word. In Tibetan is korwa, which means wheel. I'm not sure what samsara means in Sanskrit literally, but so cyclic existence is this round of birth and death and birth and death and birth and death that we've been on since beginningless time. So we've taken all kinds of different forms over the millennia, eons, and we are still in cyclic existence. So cyclic existence consists of 6 realms, what they call the 6 realms. Okay. And this is it's a very sort of broad stroke kind of understanding of cyclic existence. So it's just to give us a sort of general idea, right, of what cyclic existence really is and how these things function. Okay. So I'm going to now look for a chart that I have. The 6 realms. Okay. And actually, maybe I will share this with you. Good, I think. Uh, there we go. I am going to share this with you so we can all look at the chart together. Okay, can everybody see that? Can you see it? Is it too small? No? Okay. All right. So we have along the top here, the round, the experience, the cause of rebirth there, and some notes. And then we have these 6 realms. So I'm going to begin by explaining there's different levels of subtlety of understanding this. Okay. There's the gross level, there's a more subtle level, and then an even more subtle level beyond that for how we're meant to understand these realms. So I'm going to just begin by describing the gross level understanding. So the most basic kind of not subtle understanding. Okay. So we have 6 realms here, beginning with, they're in this order. This is the order of least suffering to most suffering. Okay, so that's why they're in this order. But really, the best realm to be in is the human realm because we have enough suffering that we sort of start to question life and want to get out of suffering. Whereas in the God realm, it's a heavenly realm and people are blissed out all the time. And so they don't even consider the possibility of getting out of samsara. It's still samsara. And the lower realms, there's so much suffering that once again, people can't even think about getting out because they're just trying to, there's so much to deal with, right? So the human realm is that kind of that sweet spot, that sort of, what do you call it? The Goldilocks, kind of position, right? Of having enough suffering and enough, what they usually term it as leisure. So sort of enough not suffering to be able to have the time and the intelligence and the, interest and all of that to study and practice. Okay. So starting with the God realm, and the experience is, as I said, heavenly, blissful, lasts a really long time. So that's the other problem is that, not only people there sort of, or beings there really blissed out all the time, but it lasts so long that like it doesn't even occur to them that it's impermanent, but it is impermanent. The cause of rebirth there. So each of these has a cause, a general cause for being reborn in a particular realm. But this is just a very like broad stroke kind of understanding. As we talked about last week when we were discussing karma, karma is very complicated, actually, very, very intricate. There's like a billion different variables, and so it becomes very um, complicated to try to understand exactly why. But in general, they give these as the causes. So here is virtuous acts done with pride. So this is an interesting concept of the Buddhist thought, and that it's that virtuous acts on their own are not enough. They're not enough. Like, it's great to do that. It's certainly much better than doing the opposite. However, it's not going to get us out of cyclic existence. It's just going to get us born in one of the higher realms. So this God, jealous God, and human realms are the three higher. Animal, hungry ghosts, and hells are the three lower realms. Okay. So virtuous acts done with pride result in rebirth as a God. And then this is not eternal, as I mentioned already. If we're looking at these notes, the process of death takes a really long time, like 700 human years. And that's the main cause of suffering in this realm because, you spend, eons, right? Just blissed out, and they describe how, oh, everyone's beautiful. And to have sex, you just look at another person, and everyone smells good and looks good and everything's easy, etc. Then when you start to like your positive karma for having, being there starts to run out, right? So then they describe it as like your flower garlands start to fade, you start to stink, you start to sweat, and all your friends are such B words. They're just like, I'm out of here. Bye. You're dying. You look gross. Get away from me. And everyone just abandons them. And then because they're in that realm, they have like a, a rudimentary kind of clairvoyance, for lack of a better word, where they can see where they're going to be reborn. So from the God realm, you can only go down, right? So they might see that, and they've used up so much of their positive karma that usually the fall is pretty steep, right? So maybe they see they're going to go from this blissful experience to a hungry ghost experience where they're starving all the time and thirsty all the time, and it's just torture for them. It's very difficult. So that's in general the God realm. The next one is the jealous God realm, also called demigod realm or asuras. Okay. And their experiences, they have a lot of wealth, but they also have a lot of jealousy and fighting. And, according to the teachings, they're fighting with the gods. And like the gods are like very powerful, much more powerful than the jealous gods. And they always win. And so it's difficult for the jealous gods. The cause of rebirth there is virtuous acts done with jealousy. And again, they suffer a lot from jealousy and from losing fights. Okay, hang on, I'm just checking. Okay, no one's watching right now. All right. Then we have the human realm, that would be us. Experience of desire, suffering. I don't know why I put choice there. I guess some choice about what you do. And cause of rebirth here is virtuous acts done with desire. And then we all know the suffering of the human realm and the Four Noble Truths, right? The suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path which leads to the cessation of suffering. So Buddha taught also that there's four main streams of suffering in the human realm, which would be birth, sickness, birth, sickness, old age, and death, the four main streams of suffering in the human realm. So as you see from these higher realms, the virtuous acts done with pride, jealousy, or desire. So you can, that's why they emphasize in the teachings to in order for a virtuous act to be like 100% virtuous and something that could actually lead to being free of cyclic existence, it needs to be done free of concepts of subject, object, and action. So um, the virtuous acts that are done without that view are not pure and will not result in freedom from samsara, but will result in a rebirth in one of the higher realms. So then we have the animal realm. Their main experience is fear, suffering, dullness. So the main cause of being born there are unvirtuous acts done with ignorance. So this kind of ignorance is a timuk. Okay, so there's two words that are sometimes translated both of them are translated as ignorance. One is timuk, which is like stupidity, dullness, kind of willful ignorance. The other is marikpa, which is much deeper and more fundamental, which is the ignorance of the reality, the reality of reality itself, and the ignorance of the self, the existence of the self at all. So these are actually really different types of ignorance. So the notes for this are, fear of other animals and people, slaughter, animal testing, and abuse. So there's so much fear in the animal realm. It's really worth paying attention to that. You know, uh, they seem to have two main experiences. One is, hunger and thirst, and they're sort of always looking for food. So if you see that, if you start pay attention, you'll see that that's true. I live in a place where there's a lot of deer, and they just spend their whole day when they're not resting um, or getting hit by cars, trying to avoid getting hit by cars. They're just looking for food. They're just looking for something to eat. They just walk all day looking for something to eat. Same with birds, same with any animals. You'll see like their whole existence is that. So it's no wonder it's just one realm away from the hungry ghost realm, because it's very much a hungry ghost experience. And so they have that, and they have fear. So fear of predators, fear of humans, fear of, just fear. You see these like nature documentaries where, these poor animals, let's say in the African, what do you call that? Savannah, where they just need something to drink, they're thirsty, it's hot, and they go to this watering hole, and it's just terror. They're just looking around, making sure there's not a predator is going to eat them, attack them, just to get a drink of water, and that's animals in the wild, and then there's animals that are raised for people to eat, which is, don't even get me started. We don't have enough time on that, but um, who suffer from the moment they're born into the moment that they die. And it's really a tragedy, and just for a momentary pleasure of the tongue, we're taking a life, and not just taking a life in a quick and easy way, but having these beings completely tortured, like literally tortured. It's so horrific. Pigs, for example, kept in between bars, their whole life, where they can't even turn around. Like, just imagine like not being able to turn around, not ever being able to stretch, not ever being able to, like in the case of chickens, just stretch your arms, like just spend your whole life not even being able to do that. And then the pigs, main way, I guess, of killing them is putting them in a gas chamber and gassing them, which, they scream, and it will just stop your heart, and that's just one example of hundreds and hundreds of examples. So if possible, really, our teacher is very strong on this, please do your best to if you can't or don't want to stop eating them altogether, at least to reduce your intake would be so wonderful. And this industry as a whole is responsible for massive amounts of global warming, famine, destruction of the rainforest, water pollution, and so forth. So we're also helping to save the planet. And then there's animal testing. Again, most animal testing is completely useless. The tests have already been done. And it's, again, just true torture. And then just abuse at the hands of human beings. So it's really not fun to be in the animal realm. We want to avoid that. And the next realm down is what's called the hungry ghost realm or Pareto realm. Their main experience is intense unmet hunger and thirst. So they're like starving, and they cannot get any food. Sometimes they say they don't even hear the words food and water. This result, the cause of being born there is unvirtuous acts done with greed. And notes on that are they have like the weight that their bodies are, they have like this huge stomachs and very, very thin, what they say, grass-like limbs. So it's really hard for them to get around. And it's this constant experience of frustrated desires. So the examples are like they might see sort of a banquet in the distance and they get there with great difficulty because of how their body is, and then they see that yes, there's this amazing kind of banquet laid out, but it's surrounded by armed guards who won't let them reach it, or again, they might see food in the distance, they get there with great difficulty, and then the moment they touch it, it turns into pus and blood, things like that. It's just horrific experience for them. Then we have the hell realms. So there's hot hells and cold hells. The hot hell experience is, very similar to what we hear in, Christian tradition of intense suffering with heat. Cold hells are intense suffering with cold. The causes for being reborn in a hell realm are unvirtuous acts done with hatred and anger expressed, and then unvirtuous acts done with hatred or anger repressed results in the cold realms. That's quite an interesting thought there. So, when we're really angry, right, we have a choice, and we're typically in our culture really only given two choices. Either you express that, so you're yelling at somebody, writing a nasty email, hitting, killing, all that kind of stuff, or you repress that, pushing it down, but you're still holding on to it, right? You're just not expressing it. So even if we don't express it, it still has a karmic result, okay? So Buddhism teaches a different way, a third way, which is neither to express nor repress it. So to experience it, so we might, like acknowledge it in that sense and let it go. Then we're not repressing it and we're not expressing it. So that takes practice, of course. We have a strong habit of, uh, expressing or repressing. It's not something that just can be solved overnight, right? But it's very worth the time and effort it takes to work on that. So, there's actually quite a lot to say about this, and maybe we'll cover that, if not next week, soon. Just dealing with anger itself, because it's quite a big topic. It's quite important because hatred and anger lead to killing, which is the worst of the negative acts. So therefore, it is the most dangerous of emotions. So to let it go requires us to see what it really is. So part of the problem we have when we think about anger, when we're experiencing anger, is we think that it's helpful to us in some way. We think it makes us powerful, or we think it helps us to, defend ourselves or whatever. And it's really not true. It actually makes us really weak. It actually makes us suffer now, because if we sit with that anger and we really are looking at it, we can see fully how unpleasant it is, how it makes us suffer, right? And in the future. So it makes us suffer now. If we pay attention, we'll see it's very unpleasant. And in the future, because if we act on that, or even if we don't act on that, if we just haven't let it go, right, it results in suffering for ourselves in the future. So it's really important to try to work with that. Uh, pardon me. So if we're still on this kind of basic understanding of these 6 realms, um, um, where we are born in any of these 6 realms is entirely dependent on our own karma. So last week we discussed that law of cause and effect. Okay, so again, it's inextricably linked with karma, because the karma, our actions, are the driving force that determines where we take birth at any given time. Okay. However, it's very hard to determine exactly what the results will be, right? Because we don't know what we've done in the past. Even if we can look at this life and just be like, no, I've been pretty good, yes, I've whatever, made some mistakes or what have you. But, I feel pretty confident that my next life will be great. Yeah, there's no guarantee of that because we don't know what we've done in the past. And karma is very complicated like that, right? Because it's not just our actions, but it's the conditions that need to be there in order for our actions to fructify, as Wolfson likes to say, to fructify. Very special saying that, to take fruit, right, to come to a result. So so we don't know actually what's in store for us, and it's not I don't know, I'm losing my words today, but it's not a gradual, we start low and then the next life you're higher and the life after that you're higher and so forth. Not at all. Okay. Because it depends on these variables, right? So the way that they describe it is like a bee in a jar, he's just everywhere. So we can be human right now, next life hungry ghost, next life God realm, next life hells, next life human again, there's no telling because it just depends on our own actions and the circumstances, the conditions that are or are not there. Okay. As I said before, human life is most conducive to attaining enlightenment. And that is the, very brief, very gross understanding of the 6 realms. On a more subtle level, and I'll stop here. Well, you guys, do you mind if we go like an extra 15 minutes? Because I think we just wasted the first 15 minutes. Is that okay? Okay. If you need to leave, it's okay. But I don't want to take time away from you because we just spent 15 minutes just discussing Zoom. So, and looking for my stupid notes. But anyway, all right. So I'll continue for a few more minutes then. So actually, on a more subtle level, all of cyclic existence itself is just a misperception of reality. So we just on a gross level, we discuss these things as if they were places, right? We use that kind of place, location terminology, born in a realm, right? As though there was, this planet has the human and animal realms, and maybe another planet has the hell realms or something like that. It's not like that. It's ultimately an experience of our consciousness. So an experience of our own mind. So this is a little bit, more difficult to explain. But if you, like Tug Rinpoche says, like, it's not like the hells are a place. He says it's like when you die, you sort of wake up into a nightmare that you experience as the hell realms. So it's ultimately a mental experience, all of these realms, including the one that we're in right now. This other mistake that people often make, maybe unknowingly, is they feel like, well, this realm is real, and maybe the animal realm is real, but all the other realms are like some kind of fantasy. No, this one is also just dreamlike and illusory, even the human realm. So all of these realms are as real as the human realm and as illusory as the human realm. Okay. It's how we are perceiving. So, being said, there's like a really sort of more detailed explanation of this, of just how the different realms experience the same thing. So, like, if you look at a river, humans experience that as water, as place to swim, a source of food if they're eating fish and so forth, something that we can clean ourselves with, something we can drink, etc. Okay. Fish and other beings that live in the river experience that as their entire world. Oops. Why is that happening? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Hold on a second. Um, so that's their whole universe. It's their whole world. This river, right? Hungry ghosts can look at that same thing and they will see uh, a sort of like flow of pus and blood. They will not experience that as water. The hell beings would experience that as like a river of lava. God realms would experience that as like a river of nectar. So it's the same thing, but all these different beings in different realms experience it differently. So that's like a more, we're not actually born in these different realms. It's experiences, it's our perception of reality, which is based upon the law of cause and effect, or based upon our own karma. And you can see that a little bit in a very, very much more smaller way. How our perception changes according to different things in our own life, right? So, how we experience the world when we're in a good mood versus how we experience the world when we're in a bad mood, or how we experience the world when we're in love versus how we experience the world when, like, we're grieving, or how we experience the world when we're drunk or high, or tripping, right? Very different experience of the same world from the same person. Yeah. So that can give you a little taste, especially sort of the, bigger, more obvious things like being drunk or high or tripping, and we can really see that how we experience the world is in our own mind and not outside of ourselves. Okay. So in a larger sense, all of these six realms function in that same way. It's just once the consciousness leaves this body as human beings, once our consciousness leaves this body, goes through the bardo, and again, this is something we can discuss later, but goes through the intermediate state and then enters another form, that is an experience of our consciousness. Okay. And then we exist in that form for however long we have the karma to exist in that form. We die, and then we take birth in another form and have that hallucination for a while until we die. Okay. So that's a more subtle understanding of this. Most subtle understanding of this is that it's all empty of inherent existence. It doesn't really exist at all in the way that we perceive it. Okay, and we don't have time to discuss that, but that is the most subtle understanding of these six realms. But even though that's true, ultimately they don't exist at all. Ultimately, it's an illusion, or on a less subtle level, this is just our perception. It doesn't mean that we don't need to take it seriously. We definitely need to take it seriously. Okay. And that is what should encourage us to practice, right? Because we look at these realms and all of this like massive suffering. I mean, even if you just look at the suffering of the human and animal realms, it's already unbearable, right? And when you add these other realms on top of it, it's just overwhelming, you know. So how can we not feel compassion? You know, how can we not have this, you know, deep desire to free all these beings of this intense suffering? And we don't exclude ourselves, you know. If we look at our lives, I'm sure that all of us have suffered a great deal, are suffering right now, or have suffered a great deal in the past. We also want to be free of that, right? So that it naturally leads to that compassion naturally leads to bodhicitta, wishing to attain enlightenment for the benefit of others. Then again, if we think about, if we're just, even if we're just thinking about ourselves, you know, I don't want to go through this. I don't want to have any of these sufferings. Like, even as someone with the so-called precious human life, you know, I feel a lot of suffering in this life. I don't want to even go through that again, much less be reborn in animal, hungry ghost, or in the hells, right? So therefore, for those two reasons, and I really want to practice, you know. So we might it might be easy to say, oh, all of these are illusory, all of these are dreamlike, but we don't actually experience like that yet, right? For the most part. Maybe we have a moment of sort of a flash of realization sometimes, you know, but in general, we're very convinced of the reality of these, of whatever we're experiencing at any given moment. And it's the same for beings in the hells, hungry ghosts, god realms, etc. Right? Everyone, every consciousness, every being, every sentient being in any of these realms experiences it, unless they're enlightened, experiences it as something very real. So we have to take it seriously. We can't just think, I don't need to practice, it's just an illusion. No, unless we practice, we're never going to see it as an illusion. Okay. Um, the last thing I want to mention is just, you know, there are different emotions, right, that are associated with these different realms, okay, and that comes in that cause of rebirth, right? So pride, jealousy, desire, willful ignorance, greed, and hatred or anger. As long as we have even a second of any of these emotions, we have the seed to be reborn in the corresponding realm. So, and if we meditate and if we study and if we are like paying attention to what is actually happening, um, it's easy to see the suffering. You know, there is suffering in pride. It's hard to catch because if we're feeling pride, we tend to sort of not realize it because, you know, it's like just a little being prideful, you know, so we're like, I'm the best, I'm great, what's the problem, you know? But if we manage to catch ourselves, we can see, like, one Lama described it as like a balloon that's about to pop. You know, there's like tension there. There's something like jealousy, we know, is suffering. Desire is suffering. Ignorance and willful ignorance is suffering. Greed is suffering. Hatred and anger is suffering. So, this is one of the reasons, pardon me, that it's so important to really pay attention and to sit with our emotions and to observe them, not just push them away and say, oh, I'm angry, I'm just trying to be a good Buddhist, I'm just going to push that down. That's not going to make it go away, right? If we have the opportunity to sit with that and to just drop the storyline, like, why are we angry, and just really look at that anger, then it becomes much easier to let it go because we see that it's suffering. Then it's not renunciation, you know. Renunciation has this, or I should say, it's not the base understanding of renunciation. Renunciation has this aspect of, we feel like, oh, it's something that we really want and it's sort of being ripped out of our hands, you know. No, renunciation is like seeing that this is causing us to suffer, and so throwing it out, yeah, because it's causing us to suffer. And Tugru Rinpoche says, you know, ultimately renunciation is about renouncing the causes of suffering, which are these six emotions, negative emotions. And the other thing I wanted to say, so that's right. So I started just talking about how, you know, if we are experiencing pride, it's a godlike realm, it's a God realm like experience. If we're experiencing hatred and anger, it's a hell realm like experience. But we're not going to understand that unless we really pay attention to it. Okay. That feeling of like greed is a very much a hungry ghost experience. So it doesn't, we should be careful that we don't make a sort of caricatures out of these things. Okay. It's not necessarily greed where you're, rubbing your hands together and, you have a handlebar mustache and, you're just like, I'm going to get something. It's just that sort of, you know, that grasping, that wanting, that and feeling like we need more, we need more, we need more. We need the latest computer, we need the latest phone, we need the best this, the best that. Oh, what else can I get from Amazon? It's not that kind of, that is greed, and that is a cause for being born in the Hungry Ghost realm. The other thing is that, all six of these realms can be seen in the human realm to some extent, not in their full iteration, but to some extent. So, God realm, for example, God realm is, uh, like I said, sort of heavenly, blissful, wealth, all of that, but they fall. So, we see countless examples of that in sports and music and celebrity, where, um, I always bring up Michael Jackson because it's such a extreme example of somebody who, was famous his whole life essentially, and was so famous at the peak that, I remember being in Nepal in this like little restaurant with like a dirt floor and sort of tent, and they had a poster of Michael Jackson, you know. Um, and then we all know what happened to him. It's a tremendous fall. And I'm sure we can come up with, a million different examples of celebrities. It's such a good example of sort of having everything and then having nothing, you know. Jealous God realm, I always think of the American, military industrial complex, right? Where there's so much money and wealth just put into um, tools for war. Um, Human realm, we know. Animal realm, we have the animals to look at, but also as human beings, sometimes we have that sort of animal realm experience, a very basic, um, thoughtless, um, kind of willful stupidity existence. And then the hungry